Rottnest Island is an island off the coast of Western Australia, located 18 kilometres west of Fremantle, a sandy, low-lying island formed on a base of limestone. Rottnest is an A-class reserve, the highest level of protection afforded to public land. The island covers 19 square kilometres and is administered by the Rottnest Island Authority under a separate Act of Parliament. Rottnest is a popular holiday destination, and there are daily ferry services to Perth, the state's capital and largest city. It has a permanent population of around 100 people, with around 500,000 annual visitors. Rottnest is perhaps best known for its population of quokkas, a small native marsupial found in very few other locations, which in 2013 found viral internet fame. The island also includes colonies of Australian sea lions and southern fur seals. A number of native and introduced bird species nest near the shallow salt lakes in the island's interior, and Rottnest has consequently been designated an important bird area. The island also includes 3 endemic tree species, notably the Rottnest Island pine, and was heavily forested before settlement. Along with several other islands, Rottnest was separated from the mainland around 7,000 years ago, when sea levels rose. Human artifacts have been found on the island dating back at least 30,000 years, and the island is called Wajimap by the Noongar people. Dutch sailors landed there on several occasions during the 17th century, by which time it was uninhabited. The island was named by Willem de Vlaming in 1696, who called it Rottnest after the quokka population. Since the establishment of the Swan River colony by British settlers in 1829, the island has variously hosted a penal colony, military installations, and internment camps for enemy aliens. Many of the island's buildings date from the colonial period, are often made from a locally quarried limestone, and are now used as accommodation for holidays. History. Prehistory. Rottnest Island was inhabited by Aboriginal people until rising sea levels separated the island from the mainland of Western Australia, about 7,000 years ago. The island features in Noongar Aboriginal mythology as Wajimap, meaning place across the water where the spirits are. Aboriginal artifacts on the island have been dated from 6,500 to more than 30,000 years ago. However, recent evidence suggests human occupation significantly before 50,000, possibly as early as 70,000 BP. There were no people on the island when European exploration began in the 17th century, and the Aboriginal people on the mainland did not have boats that could make the crossing, so the island had probably been uninhabited for several thousand years. European exploration and settlement. The island was observed by various Dutch sailors from 1610, including Frederick de Houtman in 1619. The first Europeans known to land on the island were 13 Dutch sailors, including Abraham Leeman van Santwitz, for the Weekend Bowie, who landed near Bathurst Point on the 19th of March 1658 while the ship was careened nearby. The ship had sailed from Batavia in search of survivors of the missing Virgul Drake, which was later found wrecked 80 kilometers north near present-day Ledge Point. Samuel Volcassen, the skipper of the Weekend Bowie, described the island in his journal, in slightly under 32 degrees south lat. There is a large island, at about 3 miles distance from the mainland of the South Land. This island has high mountains, with a good deal of brushwood and many thorn bushes, so that it is hard to go over. Here certain animals are found, since we saw many excrements, and besides 2 seals and a wild cat, resembling a civet cat, but with browner hair. This island is dangerous to touch at, owing to the rocky reefs which are level with the water and below the surface. Almost along the whole length of the shore, between it and the mainland, there are also numerous rocks and reefs. and slightly more to southward there is another small island. This large island, to which we have been unwilling to give a name, leaving this matter to the Honourable Lord Governor-General's pleasure, may be seen at 7 or 8 miles distance out at sea in fine weather. I surmise that brackish of fresh water might be obtainable there, and likewise good firewood, but not without great trouble. In his 1681 chart the English captain John Daniel marked an island as Maiden's Isle, possibly referring to Rottnest. The name did not survive, however. The island was given the name Rottnest by Dutch captain Willem de Vlaming, who spent 6 days exploring the island from the 29th of December 1696. Mistaking the quokkas for giant rats, de Vlaming led a fleet of 3 ships, de Geelvink, de Nijtang and Wesseltje, and anchored on the northern side of the island, near the basin. He described the island as a paradise on earth. Other explorers who stopped at the island included members of the French expedition of Nicolas Baudin in The Naturalist and the Geograph in 1801 and 1803, Philip Parker King in 1822, and Captain James Stirling in 1827. Early visitors commonly reported that much of the island was heavily wooded, which is not the case today. In 1831, shortly after the establishment of the British Swan River colony at nearby Fremantle, William Clark and Robert Thomson received land grants for town lots and pasture land on the island. Thomson immediately moved to the island with his wife and 7 children. He developed pasture land for hay production west of Herschel Lake, as well as salt harvesting from the several salt lakes, which was then exported to the mainland settlement. Salt was an important commodity before the advent of refrigeration. Aboriginal prison. 6 Aboriginal prisoners were sent to Rottnest Island in August 1838 under the superintendence of Mr. Welch and a small military force, Helia for murder, Oin for assault, Mollydobbin, Tiokan, Guadap, and Kogat for theft. All 6 escaped shortly after their arrival by stealing Thomson's boat. Helia drowned during the crossing, but the others apparently survived. The Colonial Secretary, Peter Brown, announced in June 1839 that the island would be converted to an establishment for the Aborigines, and between 1838 and 1931, Rottnest was used as an Aboriginal prison. Henry Vincent, the jailer at Fremantle, was put in charge of the establishment. A quadrangular building was constructed in 1863–64 and generally referred to as the Quad. It is used today for tourist accommodation. There were about 20 prisoners there in 1844. By 1880, there were 170. Vincent retired in 1867 after complaints regarding cruelty to prisoners. He was replaced by William Jackson. In the early 1880s, an influenza epidemic struck, killing about 60 inmates. In 1902, the abolition of the prison was announced. At the time, there were 33 Aboriginal prisoners serving sentences there. Some 3,700 Aboriginal men and boys were imprisoned during the life of the establishment. There may be as many as 369 inmates' graves on the island. One writer has suggested that 95% of the deaths were from influenza. However, government records show that 1 in 10 male prisoners died from either disease, malnutrition, or abuse from the prison guards. In 2015, after numerous protests from a local Aboriginal people for the Rottnest Island Authority to create a memorial recognizing the events, deaths and unmarked graves which lie on Rottnest Island, work began on the Wajimuk burial ground. Artifacts from this period continue to be identified and recorded. Professor Len Collard describes these artifacts, like the glass and ceramic spearheads, as an important demonstration of transitional cultural engineering through use of traditional methods to modify the new materials of European settlement. Boys Reformatory. A reformatory for boys was opened on 16 May 1881. The reformatory buildings were adjacent to the quad and included a workshop, a kitchen, 2 large dormitories, a schoolroom and 4 small cells. Carpenter John Watson constructed the buildings and became reformatory superintendent for the life of the establishment. Watson taught the boys carpentry, joinery and gardening. In May 1898, 2 boys disappeared, apparently drowned, after escaping from the reformatory and stealing a dinghy. After 20 years of operation, the facility closed on the 21st of September 1901 when the remaining 14 inmates were transferred to an industrial school on the mainland. The reformatory buildings are now used as holiday accommodation as part of the Rottnest Lodge. Fires in 1856. The settlement structures, the 2-story prison, workshop building, stables, barns and piggery were burned down. The former locations are identified in the area between the shops in the settlement area. The fire was deliberately lit by the superintendent, Henry Vincent, after 2 prisoners had escaped into a nearby bush. Vincent lit the fire with the intent of flushing the prisoners out of the hiding place. The prevailing winds at the time were blowing away from the buildings. However, the wind changed direction, which brought the flames into the settlement. About 50 tons of hay was also destroyed. Major bushfires have occurred in March 1894, January 1910, January 1917, March 1939, and February 1949. Pilot service. In 1846 a pilot service was established under Captain Edward Back. It continued for 56 years until 1903. The pilots' and crew's quarters were located in at least 3 of the colonial buildings identified in colonial buildings of Rottnest Island. Buildings 4, 5 and 6. Internment camp. Rottnest was the site of internment camps in both World War I and World War II. In World War I it was mostly used for German and Austrian suspected enemy aliens, and was closed towards the end of the war due to poor living conditions. The camp was sited near the present-day Caroline Thompson camping area. In World War II the camp was used exclusively for Italian enemy aliens and was situated near the airstrip. It had capacity for 120 internees. It was closed about halfway through the war, and its occupants were sent to various other internment and work camps on the mainland. Military history. Also during World War II, 2 9.2-inch guns were installed near the middle of the island at Oliver Hill, and 2 6-inch guns installed at Bickley Point for defense of the Fremantle port. The location of the island was seen as being important to the defense of the important port of Fremantle, the major base for the Allies in the Indian Ocean, as bombardment of any attacking ships could be made from the island before the ships would come into range of the port. A light railway was built from the jetty at Kingstown Barracks on Thompson Bay to transport materiel and munitions to the guns. Captain Frank Bertram Hussey was seconded from the Australian Staff Corps to oversee the construction of this. The military fixtures, including the barracks and railway, became known as the Rottnest Island Fortress. A number of concrete lookouts and bunkers were built around the island also. Near Wajamup Lighthouse, a battery observation post was built as a lookout to coordinate aiming and firings from the Bickley and Oliver's Hill batteries. A signals building, associated with the BOP, and a women's army barracks, built to house officers and staff who operated the BOP, were constructed there also. The latter building is used nowadays for occasional accommodation for university and other scientific research groups working on the island. After World War II the guns and infrastructure were decommissioned and parts of the railway removed. The 9.2-inch battery, however, was saved from disposal because the high cost of removing and shipping the guns to the mainland exceeded the value as scrap metal. In the 1990s, the gun emplacements and railway were extensively reconstructed, and since then a popular tourist activity has included a tour of the guns and the tunnels, with the journey to the battery being made on a purpose-built train from Kingstown Barracks. In November 2003, a new railcar was put into service for this route, called the Captain Hussey. The railcar was built with volunteer assistance and cost $171,500. Communications. Prior to about 1880, communication with the mainland was primarily with semaphore flags and flares. A manned lookout at Bathurst Point included a signalling station which relayed shipping information between Wagemup Lighthouse at the center of the island and Arthur Head at Fremantle. A heliograph was installed in 1879 at Signal Hill, the small rise overlooking the main settlement in Thompson Bay. A Frenchman by the name of Henry Coudreau was the heliograph operator and was paid $10 per year to operate the service once a day, weather permitting. A single-circuit submarine communications cable was laid from Cottesloe in 1900, after which the heliograph service was discontinued. This was replaced with a larger cable in 1935. Administration. After Rottnest was proclaimed as an A-class reserve in 1917, management was vested in the Rottnest Island Board of Control, which continued until 1956. The first chairman was Hal Colbach, who served from the 13th of May 1917 to the 23rd of July 1956. Rottnest Island was declared an A-class reserve under the Permanent Reserves Act in May 1917. A board was then appointed under the Parks and Reserves Act to control and manage the island. The Board of Control became a body corporate in 1956 and became a Board of Management. Between the 24th of July 1956 and the 29th of May 1988 it was changed to the Board of Management. Section 3, Subsection 4 of the Parks and Reserves Act 1895 to 1955 provided legislative scope for the Rottnest Island Board of Control became a body corporate on the 24th of July 1956. The Rottnest Island Board of Control became the Rottnest Island Board of Management, with power to sue and be sued in its corporate name, to acquire, hold, lease and dispose of real and personal property, to borrow money with the approval of the governor, and to do and permit to be done all things which are required by the Act to be done by the board, until 1988, at which time it became the Rottnest Island Authority came into being. During this time, the managing instrumentality was informally and generally referred to as the Rottnest Island Board. In 1988, the current Rottnest Island Authority commenced operations. Flora and fauna. Birds. Many coastal birds are frequently found in Rottnest. These include the pied cormorant, osprey, pied oystercatcher, silver gull, crested tern, fairy tern, bridal tern, rock parrot and the reef heron. The island's salt lakes contain brine shrimp which support birds such as the red-necked avocet, banded stilt, ruddy turnstone, curlew sandpiper, red-capped dotterel, Australian shelduck, red-necked stint, grey plover, white-fronted chat, Caspian tern and the crested tern. Several pairs of osprey nest at Rottnest each year. One nested salmon point is estimated to be 70 years old. Introduced peafowl are often seen near the main settlement. The island has been identified by BirdLife International as an important bird area because it supports important breeding populations of the fairy terns. Over 1% of the non-breeding population of banded stilts and regionally significant significant numbers of wedge-tailed shearwaters and red-necked stints. Other animals. Rottnest is one of the few areas in the world where the native quokka can be found. Its survival there is largely due to the exclusion of natural or introduced predators. Reptiles include dugite, the southern blind snake, king's skink, bobtail, marbled gecko, west coast sea tenotus, and Burton's legless lizard. There are 3 species of frogs: the moaning frog, the western green tree frog, and the sign-bearing froglet. With the extensive reef surrounding the island, many species of fish, crustaceans, and coral can be found. Cetaceans such as bottlenose dolphins, and migrating humpbacks and southern rights are occasionally seen. And the Perth Canyon off the island is one of main habitats for blue whales in Australia, for which there are also whale-watching expeditions. A colony of Australian sea lions reside at Dyer Island, and a colony of New Zealand fur seals reside at Cathedral Rocks. Domestic cats were introduced to Rottnest both as pets and as predators of commensal pest animals such as the black rat and house mouse at various times since European settlement. Historically, the Rottnest Island Authority has attempted to rid the island of all cats since the 1960s. It was suggested that cats may be influencing the abundance of native fauna, and if left uncontrolled, the cat population was likely to increase and could result in considerable damage to ground nesting birds and heavy predation pressure on quokkas and reptile species. A feral cat monitoring and trapping campaign was conducted in November 2001 and 2002. 4 cats were trapped and no further cat activity has been observed. A cat sighted by Rottnest Island staff for the general public in the 8 years subsequent to this program, suggesting that eradication has been successfully achieved. Plants. The island includes 3 endemic woodland tree species: the Rottnest Island pine, the Rottnest Island tea tree, and Acacia rostolifera. The Rottnest Island daisy is a commonly occurring flowering native which is also grown widely as an ornamental garden plant. Coastal dune flora include sea rocket, beach spinifex, and wild rosemary. A Pinus radiata plantation was established by internees during World War I, roughly bordering the main settlement, the Basin, and Bathurst. Plantation remnants can be seen around the golf course. Rottnest was often described as heavily wooded by early explorers. Nearly 200 years of farmland clearing, firewood collection and bushfires has denuded much of the 19 square kilometres of large trees, and a fragile and freshwater scarce environment has limited natural recovery. A conservation program including reforestation is ongoing. An island-based nursery propagates plants with island provenance used in the reforestation program and in remediating uncontrolled beach access. Geographical features. See Geographical features of Rottnest Island. Climate. Rottnest Island has a Mediterranean climate with warm, dry summers and mild, wet winters. Although the summers get little rain, they are humid. Tourism and facilities. The island became largely devoted to recreational use from the 1900s, aside from a brief period of exclusive military use during World War II. It is now visited annually by 450,000 to 500,000 visitors, an average of 330,000 of those arriving by ferry or air taxi. 70% of all visitors come for the day only. The majority of visitors arrive in summer, with nearly 20% of all visitors coming in January. The only motor vehicles permitted on the island are emergency and service vehicles, although there is also a bus service. Cycling is the transport of choice for most visitors, with many either bringing a bicycle with them or hiring one at the island's facility. The main settlement is located at Thomson Bay, which is a protected northeasterly bay facing the mainland. Other settlements are located at Geordie Bay and Longreach Bay on the northern side of the island. All are sheltered bays and well suited for boating and swimming. Many other bays around the island have permanent boat moorings which can be leased from the Rottnest Island Authority. The island has accommodation for up to 5,500 visitors, while day-only visitors can number up to 20,000 at any one time. Rottnest Island Authority accommodation options include 291 villas, units and cottages which sleep 4, 6 or 8 people and which are self-catering. This style of accommodation is reasonably basic. Demand for accommodation is very high during the summer months. Ballots are no longer held and guests can book up to 18 months in advance. Other accommodation options include group accommodation at Kingstown Barracks, the Hotel Rottnest, the Rottnest Lodge. A landscaped 40-site camping ground has just been reopened, complete with ablution block and camp kitchen facilities. Cabins at Caroline Thompson provide an alternative to camping and are popular with families, sleeping up to 6 with self-contained cooking and washing facilities. Most visitors arrive on one of the ferries from Fremantle, Perth, and Hilleries. These are operated by Rottnest Express and Rottnest Fast Ferries. Rottnest Island Airport for light aircraft is located near the main settlement. The island is a popular destination with Year 12 school leavers celebrating the end of their exams each November, known in Western Australia as Leavers Week, or just Leavers. Rear accommodation on the island is reserved for leavers during this time. Identification and proof of being a current secondary school leaver is required to book accommodation during this period. Catering facilities in the Thomson Bay foreshore area include a Dome coffee shop, Aristos waterfront seafood restaurant, Quaker Joe's, Rottnest Lodge and the Hotel Rottnest. The main settlement has a general store, including a liquor outlet, a bakery, cafe, coffee shop, subway and clothing store. The Red Rooster store closed in 2011. The lodge includes several restaurants and bars also. Geordie Bay also has a general store, liquor outlet and Geordie Cafe. A luxury hotel was planned for the island but negotiations with preferred proponents ceased. The authority states that the development of a new hotel at Mount Herschel remains a priority. The island was the site of an important Australian High Court case. Nagel v Rottnest Island Authority 177 CNR 423 arose after a man dove off a rock on Rottnest Island and became a quadriplegic. It was held that, as the island authority had promoted the site as a venue for swimming and had not put up a warning notice, it was liable for causing the injury. Activities diving is a popular activity at Rottnest. Its varied limestone reef terrain and plentiful fish make it an interesting diving destination. In particular, diving for crayfish, western rock lobster, is popular in the summer months. The season opens on the 15th of November each year, and runs until the 30th of June. Crayfish may be caught in special traps or pots, or when diving either by hand or by using a crayfish loop. The loop is a spring-loaded steel cable attached to a long pole. It is illegal to use any means that might puncture the shell to catch the crayfish. The bag limit is 6 per license per day, with a maximum of 12 per boat per day. A snorkel trail at Parker Point features underwater interpretative plaques that give information about the marine environments surrounding Rottnest. The island is the southernmost point along the Western Australian coastline at which coral grows. The Rottnest Island Rec trail was developed in conjunction with the Western Australian Museum in 1980 as the first underwater interpretative trail in the Southern Hemisphere. Visits to some of the Rottnest Island shipwrecks, in essence a museum without walls, can be made by glass-bottomed boat or by scuba and snorkel. The SS Macedon site is one of the most visited wrecks in Australia. The island features historic buildings and pleasant beaches. Annual events. The Rottnest Channel Swim is a long-distance swimming event from Cottesloe Beach to Rottnest Island. It is held each February. The Rottnest Marathon and AMP Fun Run is an annual running event operated late each October by the West Australian Marathon Club. Event distances are 5 kilometres, 10 kilometres and marathon. Rottnest is a popular comedy, film and music festival held annually in September. www.rottnest.com. Leavers Week. Swim Through Rottnest is an annual 1,600-metre swim held on the first Saturday in December. The event was first held in 1977. Competitors start on the east side of the Army Jetty in Thompson Bay, swim to the natural jetty and then return to the Army Jetty. The event is run by the Cottesloe Crabs Winter Swimming Club. The Doctor is a 27 km surf ski and paddle race from the Army Jetty to Sorrento Beach. It is held each January. Fremantle to Rottnest Big Splash is a masters swimming race from Leighton Beach to Rottnest.